Hello and welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and in today's vid we're going to be taking a whistle-stop tour of everything that you can currently do in Star Citizen. So often discussions about StarCit drift into the far future, the planned locations and features and ships and mechanics. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for that stuff. But what I like to do about once a year is stop and put exactly what is here right now front and centre. This one is primarily for those newer players who maybe haven't experienced or realised everything the game has on offer yet, or those keeping an eye on SC from the sidelines wondering if it's worth hopping in for a go. However, I think it's also useful for veteran players to stop and take a look back and see how much gameplay is actually out there right now. So if this sounds good to you, grab a cup of tea while I roll the intro, then let's get into it. So first up, it's time for a standard Loudguns disclaimer. StarCit, quite simply, is not for everyone. While it's a pretty expansive game already with, as we'll see, some pretty varied content, it is also a game in active development. While many will say alpha, including the game's developer, in my personal opinion it's more akin to what I've come to expect from early access titles on Steam. A playable experience that is getting built around you. Bugs are plentiful, systems are not finished, and some mechanics will change from patch to patch. Some changes you'll like, and others you won't. One of the best ways to get into the game and see if it's for you is to just sign up during one of the free flow events. And conveniently, if you're watching this vid shortly after it's released, there is one going on right now, running from the 2nd of July to the 9th of July. During this time, as long as you've got an account, you'll be able to download the game and give it a go. Just make sure to use a referral code when you create that account, as it will give you a nice, decent bump in starter cash. Mine's the one up on screen, but if you've got friends who play already, just ask them for theirs. The Persistent Universe, or PU for short, is the open world mini MMO experience. I say mini MMO or MMO Lite, as it's divided up into various server shards. While these offer a pretty sizable population of up to 650 players at the time of recording, this is a way off the dream of the entire player base inhabiting one universe. The game currently takes place over two star systems. You've got the lawful Stanton system, which is governed by the United Empire of Earth, or UEE, and is policed by the Navy and by the four major corporations who own the 4 planets of the system: Microtech, ArcCorp, Crusader, and Hurston. While there are vast areas of uncovered space in the system, generally speaking, crimes like assault and murder will land you on the wrong side of the law. Players will get a crime stat similar to in GTA, and will be considered hostile by law enforcement and friendly stations, while bounty hunting warrants will be issued for them to other players. Through the wormhole though, you can travel to the lawless system Pyro. While the system has its own factions, headhunters, Citizens for Prosperity, Xenothreat, Frontier Fighters and more, these are locked in perpetual conflict with one another, and importantly, player-on-player violence will result in no penalties. This is not to say that Stanton is the safe system. Everywhere can be dangerous in Star Citizen, and outside of small areas around space stations and cities, weapons are live and players can fight. And responses from AI are actually quite terrible, so don't expect the Navy to come rolling in to take out your aggressor. However, by design, Stanton is the more safe of the two. All in all, the game currently comprises of 10 planets and 18 moons, as well as numerous other points of interest, like asteroid bases, outposts, derelict ships, and caves. Progression in the current game means different things to different people, but since I want to give as honest a take on this game's current state as I can, I'm a little biased, I do personally love it. I do have to say that meaningful progression is still something largely missing from the game. You can, through various means, we'll come on to looking at what game loops exist in a minute, earn in-game currency and use it to upgrade your weapons, armour, and to unlock nearly every ship that is currently flyable by purchasing them at in-game shops. You can also trade goods and items with an alien NPC merchant, Wicklow, to acquire rarer ships and items. This is a big part of the reason that I always recommend new players to start with one of the most basic starter packages possible. because that way it's possible to just work your way up through a lot of various content. However, while there is plenty to see and buy, and reputation to build with the various NPC factions, we have not yet hit the point of some of the more meaningful progression ideas that CIG has teased, such as base building, star bases, and territorial control. And the progress that you make is always going to, at some point, get wiped and reset. Full wipes are increasingly rare, and most patches don't involve a reset to the database, but they will come, and certainly whenever the 1.0 live version is released, that will come with a full fresh start for all players. This is why I tend to view progression in SC in terms of skill. To me, it's time to practice and get better at the game. Professions in Star Citizen is just another way of saying what game loops exist. There is no skill tree or class system, so if you're a die-hard combat pilot but you wake up one day and decide your killing days are over, and you want to be a space trucker, then you can simply do that instead. In many ways, I would consider the ships in Star Citizen to be the classes. If I want to do mining, I'll need a mining ship. If I want to do combat, I'll probably need a combat ship. Some people are probably good enough that they could fight in a mining ship, but that ain't me. So in this next section of the video, I want to do a whistle-stop tour of all of Star Citizen's current game loops. This is not going to be in any kind of depth, it's purely to show you what's there and tell you a little bit about each one so you might judge what's right for you to start with. If you're interested to learn more about a specific loop I mention, then check down in the video description. I'll either include a link to one of my more detailed guides, or to another content creator that covers an area far better than I do. So let's kick things off by covering one of the two biggest areas of Star Citizen's gameplay, combat. And for this to work, I think we have to at least split it into two subcategories, ship combat and FPS combat. We do also have ground vehicles in Star Citizen, but they currently don't have very many directly applicable uses. It is great fun to have a tank battle with your mates though. Ship combat is exactly what it says on the tin. Take your ship and try to blow up other ships with it. However, this broad area covers a whole array of subsets. For one, the variance in types of combat ships is enormous, literally. We've got everything from single-seat light fighters like the Anvil Arrow, that will have you ducking and weaving in dogfights, all the way up to an enormous capital ship like the RSI Polaris or now the Aegis Idris. The Idris is essentially a mobile base, allowing you to bring a full wing of fighters as well as a huge amount of hull-mounted turrets to bear on your opponents. Combat more generally is split between PvE, player versus environment or AI, where you fight NPCs, and PvP where you fight against other players. The mission systems cater more heavily towards PvE, with a large number of contracts for bounty hunting and mercenary work that'll involve you going and fighting NPC ships. As of patch 4.1.1, we now have the addition of flight school missions that allow you to train your flight skills against enemies ranging from small fighters to cap ships, and my personal favourite, patrol and ambush missions. Patrols will send you out to scan a route, sniffing out enemies and taking them out in a variety of scenarios, while on ambush missions you'll be sent to lie in wait for your adversaries before jumping them. As with many of the loops, these various combat missions will earn you reputation as well as credits, so as you complete more of them, you'll unlock increasingly more challenging missions that offer higher rewards. On the PvP side, there's less directed gameplay. The only real mission-driven content here is player bounties, where a player who has committed crimes in the lawful system Stanton is flagged as wanted. Taking these missions will help you track them down, and if you win the fight, send them to the in-game prison to think about what they've done. However, there are increasingly more locations where ship fights can happen organically as more players are drawn to them. The PvP community is really committed to getting new folks to enjoy testing their skills against other actual people. If you seek out these groups, you'll have no shortage of organised training and combat encounters, and you can always hop into Arena Commander, Star Citizen's arena module that's designed to get you quickly into the action. AC has got plenty of modes designed for a range of ship combat. Unlike many other space games though, in SC you are not confined to your cockpit, and the majority of the game takes place in a first-person mode, which of course when you add some guns to the mix, which Star Citizen has plenty of, turns it into an FPS. On foot, FPS Combat is another fairly well fleshed out aspect of the game. We have had a variety of mercenary missions in game for a while now, which will take you to a ground location such as a bunker to fight NPC bad guys, again with reputation helping to unlock harder missions as you go. And as the game has evolved further in recent years, the amount of locations where you can get your gun on has increased, with the addition of asteroid bases and derelict ships, all crawling with bad guys to shoot. With the 4.0 patch, we also got the introduction of contested zones, areas within the Pyro space stations that serve as self-contained PvPvE arenas, with a mixture of combat against NPCs and other players as you fight your way through to the loot at the end of each map. However, the FPS side of things is really going up a gear, with the new giant mission locations like Stormbreaker, which just dropped in the 4.2 patch. Rather than being mission driven, this is essentially always on raid type content. You show up with the right gear and enough friends, and you can fight your way through a huge base in the middle of a radiation storm, steal a dangerous specimen egg, and of course, fight a giant worm boss. But some of the best combat experiences are when FPS and flight combat all get rolled up together. The Hathor sites are another of the raid locations added recently, and reward players who turn up in groups with combat ships patrolling the skies, while FPS strike teams land and get the job done on the ground. But how about folks who are not so into all that, murder? Well, good news, industry is the other of the two largest areas of gameplay in Starset. I would say that mining is probably the single most developed loop in the game, with a ton of variety and depth. I recently finished the most updated version of my ship mining guide, and while I keep that as information dense as possible, it's still just over an hour long. At its core, mining is all about heading out and finding valuable materials and gems hidden inside rocks and asteroids, then using your mining laser to charge the rock, making sure that you stay just within the sweet spot long enough to crack it apart, without cracking your ship apart in the process. Then you can scoop out all the goodies. Mining can be done from a ship, with the Misk Prospector and Drake Golem providing two solid options for the solo player, while my personal favourite, the Argo Mole, provides a multi-crew option for groups of up to 4 people, working together to crack the biggest rocks in the game. You can also head down to a much smaller scale, using ground miners like the Grey Cat Rock and the Argo Atlas Geo, or even just your multi-tool to break gem nodes. To me, one of the fantastic things about mining is that while the basic premise is really simple, there's a ton of depth to explore as you fine-tune your build and use various modules and gadgets to increase the size of rocks you're smashing. Salvage gameplay is having a bit of a renaissance in the 4.2 patch as well. It's always been a really chilled out activity compared to the much more involved mining loop. Find derelict ships, then use your salvaging lasers to scrape the valuable coating material and crush the hull for the base metals. As of the 4.2 patch though, the rates at which your salvaging lasers scrape has been increased quite significantly, making for a much more profitable loop and more satisfying visual progress. However, if you really want to get the most out of it, you'll want to also bring along a cargo ship so you can check for any valuable loot aboard. And with an increasing amount of ships getting truly physicalized components, you might get lucky and find some upgraded shield generators, power plants and quantum drives, with which to improve your own ride or sell on to other people. The mission system can help you find derelicts through salvage contracts, where you pay for the location of a broken down ship. But one of our organisation's favourite self-directed missions is to make our own legitimate salvage by combining the combat missions like bounty hunting with a crew of salvagers. Who needs to pay for the location of a derelict ship when you can just make your own? But if the space trucker life is calling you, then it's very good news. There is no shortage of cargo-oriented ships ranging from small couriers to giant interstellar freighters. In my opinion, cargo hauling is one of the industrial aspects that has advanced the most in the past year to 18 months. Since patch 3.23, cargo boxes have been fully physicalized. While this might sound terrible and tedious to some folks, the satisfaction of loading up your hauler from the freight elevators adds a new aspect to making your runs and might well appeal to other players. Trading has existed in SC for years, buying cargo from the various outposts and stations and bringing it to a market where it will fetch a higher price. However, the addition of cargo missions in 3.24 made the gameplay way more accessible. Players no longer have to pay for their own cargo, and instead can take missions to move freight from one location to another, building up your reputation in order to unlock larger hauls. You might need to bring a bigger boat though. So those that we've just looked at are probably the most solidly locked in loops, which you can get out and get involved with, and they've clearly got full support out of CIG, and they take the minimum for self-direction. I would say that there are a few more besides that I would categorise as emergent. These are loops that players are doing even though systemic support for them is not particularly well fleshed out. And one of the oldest of these loops is Piracy. For as long as anyone has been mining materials or moving cargo in Star Citizen, other players have been stealing it from them. And with the fully physicalized cargo, what is mine can become yours or vice versa, depending on who comes out on top. The game provides a number of other tools to facilitate piracy. Some ships, like the RSI Mantis, have the ability to snare passing ships out of quantum travel, locking them down and preventing their escape. And there are a number of ways to disable a ship while keeping its cargo intact. We also have locations within the game which allow you to essentially fence goods, selling them via no questions asked terminals, which will often give you a slightly lower payout, but you didn't pay any money for that cargo to begin with, did you? The racing scene has always been really heavily community-led, with players designing courses using the various structures and geometry of the game's locations. More recently though, CIG have lent the loop quite a lot of support, with racing missions that take players to various racetracks, which CIG have really upgraded visually. These also provide you with gates to pass through, so learning a course can become a lot more easy for noobs like me. Beating a certain time will get you a cash reward, but to be fair, it's unlikely to be a way to get rich quick. You'll more than likely just be covering the costs from all your crashes. However, it's the community-run events that are really something of the showstopper here. There's few things quite like seeing just such a huge amount of players zipping around a course around a city. I'd like to give a special shout out here to our Frontier racing team within our organisation. That's been a lot of fun and they even let me come along sometimes. And also to our friends over at Anzia Racing who run probably the most fantastic racing events in Star Citizen. And finally for my list we've got Rescue. Medical gameplay is pretty bare bones right now, with medguns and pens allowing you to revive other players, and medical ships provide the facilities to heal injuries and respawn players. There are some in-game systems to allow players who are incapacitated but not dead to put up a beacon to ask for a rescuer to come and get them. This is a perfect example of good one patch, bad the next though. While the update to respawning mechanics brought in with 4.1, where you will now respawn with your armour and weapons on your person, has reduced many headaches for players in StarCit, it has left a lot of the medical rescue specialists out of a job, as the price of death is just nowhere near as high nowadays. Still, like all of these things, with a bit of more work it will likely come back in time. And within organisations there are a lot of players who will dedicate themselves to being the medical rescuer for their teammates. So that was my rundown of what you can expect to do in the game right now, and I hope that many of you will join for a free fly and get stuck into what SC has to offer. But my number one piece of advice is to get out there and join a player community or organisation. These come in all shapes and sizes and cover every type of gameplay outlined in this list and more. If you'd like to check out our org, Frontier Consolidated, then you'll find the link in the video description down below. While we are building up a proper org for the game as it evolves, one of our primary goals is to just get as many people as possible to experience the multiplayer aspects of StarCit, and to this end we run many events that are open to all community members. While I would say that SC is an enjoyable game solo, and you can have a good time learning the different loops and exploring the verse, it goes to the next level when you get involved with other people, crewing multi-crew ships, flying alongside your friends, and achieving some of the bigger challenges available. Having a group of mates around you also goes a whole long way to just making things like the bugs a lot easier to deal with. For one, you can literally help each other work around them, and two, it's somebody to just laugh with about it rather than cry. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please consider dropping a like, hitting subscribe and sharing this out with your friends and org mates. But with all that said, thanks so much for watching and I look forward to seeing you next time.